I'm standing in the rain on a Portland street corner, and I have exactly 8 minutes to make this delivery or lose $50 I can't afford to lose. My hands are shaking on the handlebars of my e-bike, not from the cold, but from pure panic. The timer on my phone is counting down mercilessly. 7 minutes, 42 seconds. I should be pedaling faster. I should be ignoring everything around me. But I can't because 20 feet ahead of me, curled up under a dripping tree, is an old man who looks like he's dying. My name is Steve Morrison. I'm 28 years old, and this moment right here, this split-second decision I'm about to make, is going to completely destroy my life before rebuilding it into something I never could have imagined. But I don't know that yet. Right now, all I know is that I'm broke, exhausted, and staring at a choice that feels impossible. The old man's lips are blue. His whole body is trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. Before we dive in, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story is going to take you on a journey you won't forget. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and let me know if you've ever been go through this situation. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand why that question matters. People are walking past him like he's invisible. A woman in expensive running gear jogs by without even glancing down. A businessman pulls his rolling suitcase in a wide arc to avoid getting too close. A group of teenagers laugh at something on their phones, stepping over his outstretched legs like they're stepping over a puddle. 6 minutes, 18 seconds. I can feel my heart hammering against my ribs. That $50 penalty will mean I'm eating instant ramen for the next week instead of actual food. It means I might come up short on the money I need to send home to my family in rural Oregon. My father will call, and his voice will have that edge of disappointment that cuts deeper than any knife. My mother will sigh that long, tired sigh that makes me feel like I'm 10 years old again and somehow failing at being a son. But this man, this fragile, trembling human being in front of me, he's going to die if someone doesn't help him. I can see it in the way his chest barely rises and falls, in the glazed look in his eyes, in the pale, waxy color of his skin. 5 minutes, 41 seconds. My hands make the decision before my brain fully catches up. I squeeze the brakes. The e-bike skids slightly on the wet pavement, and I'm off running toward him, my delivery bag still strapped to my back with someone's burger and fries getting cold inside. My phone is buzzing with notifications. The app is probably already docking me, but I'm not thinking about that anymore. I'm kneeling on the soaking wet sidewalk, and the rain is coming down harder now, and I'm touching this stranger's shoulder, and his skin is ice cold through his soaked, tattered jacket. Sir, can you hear me? His eyes flutter. He tries to say something, but the words come out slurred and broken, like his mind is somewhere far away. Lost in a fog he can't escape. He can't stand up. When I try to help him to his feet, his legs just buckle. He's too weak. Way too weak. My phone is in my hand, shaking as I dial. 911, I need an ambulance right now. There's an elderly homeless man, corner of 5th and Oak in Portland. He's barely conscious. He looks hypothermic. Please hurry. The operator's calm, professional voice asks me questions. I answer them as best I can while I'm shrugging out of my jacket, the only decent one I own, and draping it over his shoulders. The rain immediately soaks through my hoodie. I can feel the cold seeping into my bones, but I don't care. This man needs it more than I do. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. The timer hits 0. My phone buzzes with the notification I've been dreading. Delivery late. Penalty 50 has another buzz. Customer complaint filed. Account rating decreased. I stare at the screen for half a second, and then I shove the phone back in my pocket. It doesn't matter. None of it matters, because the ambulance is pulling up. Sirens cutting through the rain, and paramedics are jumping out, and they're checking his vitals, and one of them is saying severe malnutrition and possible hypothermia, and they're lifting him onto a stretcher. I should let them take him. I should get back on my e-bike, finish my shift, go home to my cramped, moldy apartment and try to forget this ever happened. But something inside me won't let go. Maybe it's because I know what it's like to be invisible. Maybe it's because I've spent my whole life being the person who helps, who sacrifices, who shows up even when no one else does. Or maybe it's because when I look at this frail, confused old man, I see something in his eyes that breaks my heart wide open. I'm coming with you. I tell the paramedics. They exchange glances. Are you family? No, but I'm all he's got right now. They nod. And I climb into the ambulance. And as we pull away from that street corner, I have no idea that I've just stepped into a story that will involve missing billions, family betrayals, courtroom battles, and a discovery that will make headlines across the country. All I know is that I made a choice, and that choice is about to change absolutely. Everything. Let me tell you about the life I had before that rainy afternoon. Let me tell you about Steve Morrison, the guy who worked himself half to death and still couldn't get ahead, the guy whose own family treated him like a walking ATM, the guy who was so used to being alone that he'd almost forgotten what it felt like to matter to someone. I grew up in a small, dying town in rural Oregon, the kind of place where everyone knows your business and opportunities are about as common as rain in the desert. My parents, Richard and Linda Morrison, ran a struggling farm that produced more debt than crops. We weren't just poor. We were the kind of poor where you wear the same 3 shirts to school all year and pretend it's a fashion choice, where dinner is whatever's cheapest at the grocery store, where the word vacation might as well be a foreign language. I have a younger brother, Marcus, 5 years younger than me, which in my family might as well have been a different generation. From the moment Marcus was born, the rules changed, or maybe the rules were always different for him. And I just didn't notice until I was old enough to feel the sting of it. When I was 8 years old, I was waking up before dawn to feed the chickens and help haul water from the well because the pump was broken and we couldn't afford to fix it. Marcus got to sleep in, got to play video games on our one ancient console, got to be a kid. When I asked my dad why I had to work and Marcus didn't, he looked at me like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. You're the oldest. Steve, you set the example. You helped the family. That became the theme of my entire childhood. You're the oldest. You set the example. You helped the family. I remember my 10th birthday. I'd been saving up the few dollars I earned, doing odd jobs for neighbors. Mowing lawns, washing cars, anything I could find. I had $23, and I wanted to buy myself a used bicycle from the thrift store so I wouldn't have to walk the 3 miles to school anymore. I told my parents about it at dinner, so excited I could barely sit still. My dad barely looked up from his plate. We need that money for the electric bill, Steve. But Dad, I've been saving for months. The electric bill. Steve, I handed over the money. 2 weeks later, Marcus got a brand new basketball because he'd had a bad day at school, and my mum wanted to cheer him up. Brand new, not from the thrift store, from the actual sporting goods store in the next town over. Nobody asked me if I'd had any bad days. School was more of the same. I worked my ass off. Stayed up late studying by flashlight because we didn't have a desk lamp in my room. Brought home straight A's on my report card. My dad glanced at it and said, "Good, that's what you're supposed to do. No celebration. No, we're proud of you. Just an expectation met. A box checked." When Marcus brought home C's and D's, it was he's still figuring things out. Don't push him too hard, Richard. By the time I was 13, I was working after school at a neighbor's farm, mucking out stalls and fixing fences, coming home bone-tired and reeking of manure. Every penny I earned went straight to my parents. They said it was to help with household expenses, to teach me responsibility, to prepare me for the real world. Meanwhile, Marcus was hanging out with his friends, playing sports, living an actual teenage life. Your brother needs time to grow, my mom would say whenever I expressed even the slightest frustration. You've always been more mature for your age. Steve, you can handle more. What she meant was you're useful, so we'll use you. Your brother isn't useful yet, so we'll protect him. I left home the day after I turned 18, packed everything I owned into one duffel bag, told my parents I was moving to Portland, to find work, to build a life. My dad shook my hand like I was a business acquaintance. My mom cried for about 30 seconds and then said, "Don't forget to send money home when you can. We're counting on you, not we'll miss you, not we're proud of you for chasing your dreams. Just a reminder that my value to them was financial, and like an idiot, I sent them money every single month. $800, then $1,000, then $1,200 as I picked up more work. I juggled 3 jobs in Portland. During the day, I was a cashier at a convenience store called Quick Stop, scanning lottery, tickets and cigarettes for a parade of people who looked as dead inside as I felt. In the afternoons, I delivered food for an app called Quick Eats, racing through traffic and rain, my e-bike's battery always hovering near empty, just like my bank account. At night, I worked security at a warehouse, sitting in a dark booth, watching camera feeds of absolutely nothing happening, fighting to keep my eyes open. I was making just enough to cover my rent on a tiny, depressing studio apartment in a building that smelled like mildew and regret, to eat cheap food that kept me alive but not healthy, and to send that monthly check home. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was building towards something, but deep down I knew I was stuck. I was running on a treadmill set to a speed I couldn't maintain, and every month I got a little more tired, a little more hollow, and every month, like clockwork, the phone calls came. "Steve, it's Dad. Did you send the money yet? It's the 3rd of the month. No, how are you doing? No, are you eating okay? Just a balance check." My father treated me like a bank account with a voice once. I tried to have an actual conversation with him. I called on a Sunday afternoon, my 1/2 day off, and I told him about this idea I had to maybe take a night class, learn some new skills, work toward a better job. I was excited, hopeful even. I thought maybe he'd be proud that I was trying to better myself. He cut me off halfway through. "That's great, Steve, real ambitious. But listen, your mother and I need an extra $200 this month. The truck needs new tires, and Dad, I just told you I want to take a class, and I just told you we need $200. What's more important, Steve? Some class or helping your family?" I sent the $200. I didn't sign up for the class. Meanwhile, Marcus was still living at home, rent-free, 23 years old, and bouncing between part-time jobs that he'd quit after a few weeks because the boss was mean or the work was boring. And every time I talked to my mom, she'd make excuses for him. "Marcus is going through a hard time. Steve, he's trying to find himself. He's 23. Mom, not everyone matures at the same pace. You know that. You've always been the responsible one." Translation: "You've always been the one we can squeeze. So we're going to keep squeezing." I saw Marcus's Instagram posts. New shoes, nights out at bars, concert tickets. Meanwhile, I was eating ramen noodles for dinner 4 times a week and calculating whether I could afford to turn on the heat in my apartment, or if I should just wear 2 hoodies to bed. But I kept sending the money, because that's what I did. That's who I was. Steve Morrison, the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who sacrificed everything and got nothing in return except the vague, crushing weight of obligation, until that day in the rain. Until the moment I saw an old man dying on the sidewalk and made a choice that finally put someone else's needs above the endless, thankless demands of my so-called family. I didn't know it yet, but that moment was the beginning of my freedom. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells that made my stomach turn. I sat in the emergency room waiting area, still soaking wet, my delivery bag abandoned in a corner, my phone buzzing non-stop with notifications I was too drained to check. Finally, a doctor approached me, clipboard in hand, expression professionally, neutral. "Are you the one who brought in the elderly male? No identification?" "Yes, is he okay?" The doctor's expression softened just a fraction. "He's stable for now. Severe malnutrition, hypothermia, and significant signs of cognitive impairment. We're running tests, but it appears he has advanced Alzheimer's disease. He can't tell us his name, where he's from, or if he has any family." My heart sank. "So what happens to him?" "We'll treat him, stabilize him, and then contact social services. They'll try to place him in a facility, but I'll be honest with you. Those places are overcrowded and underfunded. Someone in his condition." The doctor trailed off. But I understood what he wasn't. Saying that to someone in his condition would be warehoused, forgotten, left, to fade away in a room full of strangers who were also fading away. "Can I see him?" The doctor nodded, and led me to a small room where the old man lay in a hospital bed, hooked up to an IV, looking impossibly small and fragile. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, and when I walked in, they tracked slowly to my face. There was a flicker of recognition there, or maybe just confusion. It was hard to tell. "Hey," I said softly, sitting in the chair beside his bed. "You scared me out there. How are you feeling?" He blinked slowly, lips moving like he was trying to form words, but nothing came out coherent. Just sounds fragments. Over the next few days, I visited him every chance I got. Before my shift at Quick Stop, I'd stop by with a container of soup from a cheap deli. After my delivery runs, I'd swing by the hospital, still sweaty and exhausted, and sit with him while he ate slowly, spoon shaking in his hand. At night, after my security shift, I'd arrive just before visiting hours ended and help the nurses wash him, change his sheets, make sure he was comfortable. The nurses started to recognize me. "You're a good grandson," one of them said, and I didn't correct her. It felt easier to let her think we were related than to explain the truth, which was that I had no idea why I was doing this. I just knew that I couldn't walk away. The old man's memory didn't improve. The doctors confirmed it. Advanced Alzheimer's, probably accelerated by years of malnutrition and living on the streets. He couldn't remember his name, his past, anything about who he used to be. He was like a book with all its pages torn out. Just a worn cover left behind. I tried to find information about him. I called homeless shelters, posted on community boards, checked missing persons databases. Nothing. It was like he'd appeared out of thin air. Or maybe like he'd been invisible for so long that the world had stopped. Looking after a week, the hospital called me. "Mr. Morrison, we need to discharge. Your friend, Social Services, has a bed available at a facility across town. They'll pick him up tomorrow." I thought about that facility. I'd driven past places like that before. Grey buildings with barred windows, the smell of urine and despair seeping through the walls. I imagined him there, confused and scared, wandering hallways and calling out for someone who would never come. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling of my apartment, and I made a decision that I knew was completely insane. The next morning, I went to the hospital before the social services transport arrived. I found the doctor, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. "I want to take him home. I'll take care of him." The doctor stared at me like I'd just said I wanted to fly to the moon. "Mr. Morrison, do you understand what you're signing up for? This man needs constant supervision. He has advanced Alzheimer's. He can't be left alone. He'll need medication, special food, regular medical checkups." "I understand. I'll do it. You're not family. You'd have to sign temporary guardianship papers. I assume full legal responsibility. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign." And I did. I signed a stack of forms so thick my hand cramped. The hospital discharged him into my care with a bag of medications, a list of instructions, and a social worker's card with a number to call if it becomes too much. I took him home in a taxi I couldn't afford, the meter ticking up while he sat next to me, staring out the window with those lost, foggy eyes. When we arrived at my apartment building, he looked around like he was seeing the world for the first time, or maybe like he was trying to remember if he'd seen it before. "This is home now," I told him, unlocking the door to my tiny studio. "It's not much, but it's warm. And you'll be safe here." He nodded vaguely and shuffled inside. That first night, I realized just how insane my decision had been. The apartment was barely big enough for one person, let alone two. I gave him my bed and slept on the floor. He woke up 3 times, confused and disoriented, calling out for people whose names I didn't recognize. Each time I had to calm him down, reassure him, guide him back to sleep. By morning, I was exhausted. But when I got up to make breakfast, cheap oatmeal and instant coffee, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching me with something almost like gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. And just like that, every doubt I'd had vanished. Taking care of him was harder than anything I'd ever done. And I'd done a lot of hard things. I was still working 3 jobs, still barely scraping by, and now I had another mouth to feed, another person depending on me. My already tight budget became suffocating. I started skipping meals so he could eat more. I bought generic medications and hoped they'd work just as well as the name brand ones the doctor had recommended. I stuck reminder notes all over the apartment. Turn off stove, lock door, drink water every morning before I left for my shift at Quick Stop. I'd make him breakfast, help him eat if his hands were shaking too much, lay out his medications with labels. Take these with food. I'll be back at 2. I'd write my phone number on a piece of paper and tuck it in his shirt pocket, just in case he wondered. Outside, the first few weeks were hell. I was constantly anxious, calling home between deliveries to make sure he'd answered the phone, racing back during my lunch break to check on him. Once I came home to find he'd tried to make soup and left the stove on, the pot blackened and smoking. My heart nearly stopped, but gradually things settled into a rhythm. He was weak at first, shuffling around the apartment like a ghost, but with regular meals and medication, his health improved. He started moving more easily, eating more, even smiling occasionally. He'd do small tasks around the apartment, sweeping the floor with slow, deliberate movements, washing dishes, folding laundry. It was like muscle memory from another life, habits so deeply ingrained that even Alzheimer's couldn't erase them completely. And every night when I came home, from my security shift, exhausted and aching, he'd have something waiting for me. A bowl of soup he'd made from canned vegetables and broth, a sandwich, instant coffee that was somehow still hot. He couldn't remember his own name, but he remembered to take care of me. One night, I came home particularly destroyed. My boss at Quick Stop had yelled at me for being 2 minutes late. A customer on my delivery route had accused me of stealing their fries and given me a 1-star rating. At the warehouse, the heat had broken, and I'd spent 8 hours shivering in a booth that felt like a freezer. I walked into the apartment barely able to stand, and there he was, holding out a steaming mug of tea. "You work hard," he said, voice rough but kind. "Drink this. You'll feel better." I took the mug and something inside me just broke. I sat down on the floor, back against the wall, and I cried. Not quiet tears, real ugly, gasping sobs that I'd been holding in for years. All the exhaustion, all the loneliness, all the feeling like I was nothing, more than a tool for other people to use, it all came pouring out. He sat down next to me, moving slowly, and put a weathered hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, this old man with no memory, no past, no idea who he used to be, and he let me cry. And somehow that was exactly what I needed. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel alone, but of course, reality doesn't care about moments of peace. Reality showed up in the form of my phone ringing at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. I saw my dad's name on the screen and felt my stomach drop. "Steve, where the hell is this month's money?" I'd been dreading this conversation. The old man's medications, the extra food, the taxi rides to follow up doctor's appointments. It had all added up. I'd sent $700 instead of my usual $1,200. I'd hoped my parents wouldn't notice, or maybe that they'd just let it slide for once. I should have known better. "Dad, work's been slow. The delivery app cut my hours. Don't give me excuses." "Steve, your mother and I are counting on that money. The mortgage payment is due. The truck needs repairs. And Marcus still hasn't found a new job. Marcus is 23 years old. Dad, maybe he should..." "Don't start with that. Your brother's going through a rough time. He needs support, not judgment from you." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The old man was asleep in the bed, his breathing soft and steady. I looked at him, this fragile person who had no one else, and I felt something shift inside me. "I'll send what I can," I said quietly. "What you can. Steve, we need the full amount. What the hell are you spending money on over there?" I could have told him the truth. I could have explained about the old man, about the choice I'd made, about how I was trying to do something good for once in my life instead of just being everyone else's ATM. But I knew how that conversation would go. "I'll figure it out," I said, and hung up before he could respond. The calls got more frequent after that. First weekly, then twice a week, then almost daily. My dad demanding to know when the money was coming. My mom with her guilt trips, her sad sighs, her "We're really struggling, Steve, and we're counting on you." I started sending less, 800 one month, 600 the next, 500 the month after that. Each time the calls got angrier. You're killing us. Steve, we're going to lose the house because of you. You're the most selfish son we've ever had. That last one stung the most because it was so absurd. I'd spent my entire life being unselfish. I'd sacrificed my childhood, my teenage years, my whole 20s, sending them money I could barely afford to send. And now, the one time I chose to help someone else, someone who actually needed me. I was selfish, but I kept making that choice. Every month I chose him over them, and every month the weight on my chest got a little lighter, even as the guilt tried to pull me back down. 4 months after I brought him home, my life reached a breaking point. The stress of working 3 jobs, taking care of the old man, and dealing with my family's constant demands finally caught up with me. I got sick. Not a little cold. Really, truly sick. It started with a cough I couldn't shake, then a fever that spiked so high I could barely think straight, then complete and total exhaustion that made even sitting up feel impossible. I called in sick to all 3 jobs, knowing it would cost me, knowing my bosses would be pissed, but I physically could not get out of bed. The old man found me one morning, drenched in sweat, shivering under every blanket I owned. "You're very sick," he said, his foggy eyes clearing for just a moment with worry. I tried to tell him I was fine, but the words came out as a wheeze. For the next week he took care of me. This man with advanced Alzheimer's, who couldn't remember his own name, who needed reminder notes to do basic tasks, took care of me with a tenderness that made me want to cry. He made soup. Simple canned soup heated on the stove that he miraculously didn't burn. He brought me water every few hours, setting it on the makeshift nightstand with a gentle reminder to drink. He checked on me constantly, shuffling over to feel my forehead with the back of his hand, his expression concerned. Once, I woke up in the middle of the night to find him sitting in the chair beside the bed, just watching me sleep, making sure I was still breathing. "Why are you awake?" I croaked. "Making sure you're okay," he said simply, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. During that week, delirious with fever, I sent a text to my parents. My hands could barely hold the phone, but I managed to type out, "Really sick. High fever, struggling." I waited for a response. Waited for my mom to call and ask if I needed anything. Waited for my dad to maybe, for once, put aside his demands and just check on me. The text sat there, delivered and read. No response. The next day, still nothing. The day after that, my dad finally called. My heart lifted for a second. Maybe he actually cared. "Steve, it's been a week and you still haven't sent any money. What's going on?" That was it. No, "Are you okay?" No, "What can we do to help?" Just a reminder that I was late with my payment. Something inside me died in that moment. Or maybe something inside me finally woke up. I hung up without answering. And I didn't call back. It took me 2 weeks to fully recover, and during that time the old man was my constant companion. When I was finally strong enough to sit up, to eat solid food, to think clearly, I looked at him and realized something that should have been obvious all along. This man, this stranger with no memory and no past, had shown me more care in 2 weeks than my own family had shown me in 28 years. Blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does, kindness does, showing up when someone needs you does, and my so-called family had failed that test. Over and over and over again, life settled into a new normal. I went back to work, still exhausted but functional. The old man continued his slow recovery, gaining weight, moving with more confidence, even laughing occasionally at shows on our tiny, ancient TV. We fell into routines that felt comfortable. Breakfast together before I left, dinner together when I got home, evenings spent in companionable silence, him folding laundry while I caught up on bills or watched him with a sense of peace I'd never felt before. Months passed, then a year, then nearly 2 years. My parents stopped calling as frequently. The few times they did reach out, it was always the same. Demands for money, guilt trips, veiled threats. I sent what I could, when I could. But I'd stopped letting their disapproval control me. Marcus had apparently racked up some kind of debt, gambling. My mom said vaguely in one voicemail, and they expected me to help cover it. I didn't. For the first time in my life, I just didn't. The old man and I built a small, quiet life together. It wasn't glamorous. We were still poor. I was still working myself ragged, but I wasn't alone anymore. And neither was he. Then came the Sunday afternoon that changed everything. I was lying on the floor of the apartment, my one day off, scrolling mindlessly through news articles on my phone. The old man was napping on the bed, his soft snores filling the room. I was reading about some local political scandal when an article popped up in my feed, one of those sensational missing persons, stories that news sites love to resurface every few years. The headline read, "Family still searching for missing billionaire. Arthur Caldwell, and 8 years later." I almost scrolled past it, but something made me stop. Maybe it was the photo. An older man in a sharp suit, silver hair, confident smile. Something about the shape of his face. The set of his eyes. I sat up, heart starting to pound. The article described Arthur Caldwell, founder and CEO of Caldwell Financial Group, one of the largest investment firms on the West Coast. He'd disappeared 8 years ago after a business trip to Portland. Early-stage Alzheimer's, the article said. He'd wandered off from his hotel and vanished without a trace. His family had searched for years, offered rewards, hired private investigators. Nothing. I looked at the photo again. Then I looked at the old man sleeping on my bed. The bone structure was the same. The eyes, the small scar on his right cheek that I'd always wondered about. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I zoomed in on the photo, compared it to the face I saw every day. The face I knew better than my own at this point. It was him. It had to be him, Arthur Caldwell. Missing billionaire. And I'd been taking care of him for almost 2 years without having any idea who he was. I sat there on the floor of my crappy apartment, phone clutched in trembling hands, and my entire world tilted sideways. What the hell was I supposed to do now? I didn't tell him. Not right away. How do you tell someone with Alzheimer's that you think you figured out who they are? How do you explain that the life they've forgotten was one of power and wealth and influence? That somewhere out there, a family has been searching for them for 8 years? Instead, I did research. Obsessive, frantic research. During my breaks at Quick Stop, I'd pull up articles on my phone, scrolling through every piece of information I could find about Arthur Caldwell. During my delivery runs, I'd listen to podcasts about his disappearance. At night, during my security shift, I'd have my laptop open, diving deep into business profiles, news archives, anything I could find. The more I learned, the more certain I became. Arthur Caldwell had been a legend in the financial world. Self-made billionaire, built his firm from nothing, known for his sharp mind and strategic brilliance. He'd been married once, widowed young, and had one son, Richard Caldwell, who'd taken over running the company after Arthur's disappearance. There were photos of Arthur from years ago, attending charity galas, giving speeches, shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. And in every single photo, I could see the man who now lived in my apartment, who made me soup when I was sick, who couldn't remember his own name but somehow remembered to care. The article listed a contact for the family. Emily Caldwell, Arthur's granddaughter, who'd apparently never stopped searching for him. I stared at her name on the screen for hours, my thumb hovering over the phone number listed below it. Should I call? Should I send an email? What if I was wrong? What if this was all some coincidence? And I was about to insert myself into a grieving family's worst nightmare with false hope? But what if I was right? What if this man's family had been looking for him all this time, and I was the only person who could bring him home? After 3 sleepless nights, I made the call. The phone rang 4 times. Then a woman's voice, young and professional. Emily Caldwell speaking. I took a deep breath. Ms. Caldwell, my name is Steve Morrison. I'm calling from Portland. I think I have your grandfather. Silence. Then, excuse me? Arthur Caldwell. I found him on the street almost 2 years ago. He's been living with me. I didn't know who he was until I saw an article, and I think it's him. I really think— Stop. Her voice was sharp now. Is this some kind of scam? Because we've dealt with a lot of those over the years, And I swear to God, if you're trying to, I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything. I just thought you should know. I told her everything. The rainy afternoon, the ambulance, the hospital, the decision to take him home, 2 years of caring for him, of building a life together. I described him in detail: height, weight, the scar on his cheek, his mannerisms, his foggy blue eyes. Emily was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Oh my God, I can send you photos," I said. I don't know what I can do to prove it. But send the photos, now please." I took a few pictures of him sleeping, trying to get good angles of his face, and sent them to the email address she gave me. Then I waited, phone pressed to my ear, heart hammering. I heard a sharp intake of breath, then crying, actual, real crying. "It's him," Emily said through tears. "That's my grandfather. Oh my God, that's really him." Everything moved fast after that. Too fast. Emily wanted to come to Portland immediately. Wanted to see him, wanted to bring him home. I pushed back. "He doesn't remember you," I said carefully. "He doesn't remember anyone. And he trusts me. I'm not just handing him over to a stranger, even if that stranger is family. I need to know he'll be safe." Emily was quiet for a moment, and I thought she might argue. Instead, she said, "You're right. Thank you for protecting him. How do you want to do this?" We agreed that I would bring him to the family estate in the Bay Area. I'd drive him down myself, stay with him during the transition, make sure he was comfortable before I left. Emily gave me the address and promised that the whole family would be there to welcome him. Home, the drive from Portland to the Bay Area was supposed to take about 10 hours. I rented a car I couldn't afford, packed our few belongings, and told him we were going on a trip. "Where?" he asked, looking confused but trusting. "Somewhere important," I said. Unable to tell him more than that, he nodded and got in the car without protest. We drove through rain and fog, down highways that cut through forests and farmland. He sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window like he was trying to recognize something, anything. Every so often he'd murmur, "I think I know this place," but he could never explain why. My heart was breaking the entire drive, because I knew what this meant. This quiet life we'd built together, this small apartment where we took care of each other, where I'd finally found something like peace, it was ending. He was going home. To a mansion, to wealth, to a family that had been searching for him for 8 years, and I was going back to Portland alone to that empty apartment and those 3 dead-end jobs and a life that suddenly felt even more hollow than before. But it was the right thing to do. I knew it was the right thing to do. We arrived at the estate just as the sun was setting. And when I saw the place, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a house. It was a compound. High walls, security gates, manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than I made in a year. I pulled up to the gate, gave my name, and was buzzed through. Emily was waiting at the front entrance. She was in her mid-20s, dressed simply but expensively, brown hair pulled back, eyes red from crying. When she saw Arthur step out of the car, she ran to him. "Grandpa," she said, voice breaking, and wrapped him in a careful hug. He stood there, stiff and confused, patting her back awkwardly. "Hello?" he said politely. Like he was greeting a stranger, Emily pulled back, tears streaming down her face. "It's okay. It's okay that you don't remember. You're home now. You're safe." I helped him inside, my hand on his elbow, feeling like I was walking him to his execution instead of his homecoming. The inside of the house was even more overwhelming than the outside. High ceilings, expensive furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than my entire life. And then I met Richard Caldwell. He came striding into the entrance hall like he owned the place, which I guess he technically did. Mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, expensive suit, and an expression that made my skin crawl. When he saw Arthur, he stopped dead. For just a second, I saw something in his face. Not joy, not relief. Panic. Pure, undisguised panic. Then it was gone, replaced by a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad," he said. Too loud, too jovial. He moved forward and gave Arthur an awkward, stiff hug. "Welcome home." But his eyes weren't on Arthur. They were on me, and the look in them was clear. "Who the hell are you?" And why did you bring him back? Emily introduced me, explained how I'd found Arthur, how I'd cared for him for 2 years. Richard's smile got tighter with every word. Well, he said when she finished, we certainly appreciate what you've done. Mr. Morrison, we'll take it from here. It felt like a dismissal. Like I was a delivery driver who'd dropped off a package and was now expected to leave. I looked at Arthur, who was staring around the grand entrance hall with confused, frightened eyes. He reached for my hand, gripping it tight. Don't go, he said quietly. And my heart shattered. Emily saw it too. Maybe Steve should stay for a few days, she suggested. Just to help Grandpa adjust. Richard's jaw tightened. That won't be necessary. This is a family matter. With respect, Mr. Caldwell, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. He doesn't remember you. He doesn't remember any of this. I'm the only familiar thing he has right now. I'm not leaving until... I know he's okay. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Richard looked like he wanted to throw me out. Emily looked relieved. And Arthur, still gripping my hand, looked like a scared child. Fine, Richard said through gritted teeth. A few days. Then you leave, and we handle our family business. I stayed in one of the guest rooms that night, unable to sleep, staring at the ornate ceiling and wondering what the hell I'd just walked into. Over the next few days, I watched Richard Caldwell very carefully. And the more I watched, the more uneasy I became. Arthur was given a room in the main house, a beautiful suite with a view of the gardens. But it felt less like a homecoming and more like a confinement. Richard hired a new nurse, someone Arthur didn't know, someone who reported directly to Richard. Emily's visits with her grandfather kept getting cut short, always with some excuse. He needs rest. He's not having a good day. The doctor says too much. Stimulation isn't good for him. I was allowed to visit, but only because Arthur got agitated whenever I wasn't around. And even then, Richard made sure I was never alone with him for long. Emily and I started talking more, usually in hushed conversations, in hallways or out in the gardens where we couldn't be overheard. She'd always had suspicions about her uncle, she admitted. Things hadn't added up during the years. Arthur had been missing. The company changed, she said one afternoon, voice low. Uncle Richard made a lot of aggressive moves, sold off assets, restructured things. Some of it made sense, but some of it, she trailed off. Looking worried, some of it what? Some of it felt like he was setting things up to benefit himself, not the company. Grandpa was always careful, always conservative. Richard took risks, big ones. I thought about Richard's face when he'd first seen Arthur, that flash of panic. What happens now that Arthur's back? I asked. Emily bit her lip. Legally, Grandpa is the majority shareholder and CEO, but he can't run the company anymore, not with his condition. There will have to be discussions about guardianship, about who makes decisions on his behalf. Let me guess. Richard wants that power. Of course he does. He's been acting CEO for 8 years. He's not going to give that up. Easily, I was starting to understand why I made Richard so nervous. I was a witness. I'd seen Arthur at his most vulnerable, had proof that he could be manipulated or coerced. And more than that, Arthur trusted me. In a battle for control, that trust was dangerous. My fears were confirmed a week later when Emily called me, voice shaking. Steve, they're trying to get Grandpa to sign a power of attorney. Uncle Richard has papers drawn up that would give him complete legal and financial control. My blood ran cold. When? This afternoon. They're saying it's just to formalize things, but I've seen the paperwork. It's not just formalization. It's everything. I didn't ask permission. I drove to the estate, showed up at the gate and demanded to be let in. The security guard tried to stop me, but Emily had already called ahead, and he reluctantly buzzed me through. I found them in Arthur's suite. Richard, his wife Margaret, who I'd met briefly, a cold woman who looked at me like I was dirt, and their son Lucas, a spoiled 25-year-old who spent most of his time posting on social media about his luxury lifestyle. They were all standing around Arthur, who sat in a chair looking overwhelmed and confused, a pen in his shaking hand. What's going on? I said from the doorway. Everyone turned. Richard's face went red. "This is a private family meeting. Mr. Morrison, you need to leave." "The hell I do." I walked over to Arthur, whose eyes lit up when he saw me. "Are you okay? Do you understand what you're signing?" He looked down at the papers in front of him, then back at me. "They say I have to. They say it's important." "He absolutely doesn't have to," Emily said, appearing behind me. "This is coercion, Uncle Richard. You're taking advantage of someone who can't fully understand what he's agreeing to." Richard's wife, Margaret, stepped forward, voice dripping with condescension. "This is none of your business, either of you. Arthur needs proper representation, and Richard is his son. His son who's been running the company into the ground and lining his own pockets." Emily shot back, and suddenly the room exploded, shouting, accusations, Lucas calling Emily a power-hungry brat, Margaret calling me a gold digger, Richard standing there red-faced and furious, demanding that everyone calm down while simultaneously threatening to call security. And in the middle of it all, Arthur sat there, tears running down his face, hands shaking, staring at the papers like they were a death sentence. I knelt in front of him, taking his hands in mine. "You don't have to sign anything you don't want to sign. Do you want to sign this?" He looked at me, his foggy eyes clearing for just a moment. "No," he whispered. "I don't want to. I'm scared." I stood up and turned to Richard. "He's not signing. You have no authority here." "I have enough authority to call Adult Protective Services and report elder abuse, because that's what this is." The room went silent. Emily pulled out her phone. "I've been documenting everything, Uncle Richard. The restricted visits, the sudden change in nursing staff, the isolation, and I've been looking into the company's finances during Grandpa's absence. Want to tell everyone about the offshore accounts, the restructured deals that funneled money to shell companies you control." Richard's face went from red to white. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I have a lawyer who disagrees, and I have 8 years of documents that I'm ready to turn over to federal investigators if you don't back off." It was a standoff. Richard and his family on one side, looking like cornered animals. Emily and me on the other, protecting a confused, scared old man who just wanted to be safe. Finally, Richard grabbed the papers off the table. "This isn't over," he hissed. Then he stormed out, Margaret and Lucas following. Emily and I got Arthur out of that house that same day. She'd already made arrangements. A smaller property outside the city, secure and private, where Arthur could live in peace. We moved him there with just a few belongings, and I stayed sleeping on a couch, helping him adjust. "Thank you." Emily said one night after Arthur had gone to bed, "I couldn't have done this without you. He's worth fighting for." I said simply. What I didn't say was that this fight was far from over. Richard wasn't going to just let this go. There was too much at stake. Billions of dollars, control of a financial empire, and his own reputation. Emily had basically accused him of fraud, and now she had to prove it or face a lawsuit. That would destroy her. The next few months were a legal nightmare. Emily hired lawyers and forensic accountants. She submitted evidence to the SEC and the FBI. The media got wind of the story, and suddenly it was everywhere. Missing billionaire returns. Family power struggle ensues. My face ended up in the news. Reporters dug into my background, found out about my 3 dead-end jobs, my struggling family, painted me as either a hero or an opportunist, depending on which network you watched. I stopped reading the articles, stopped going online. Just focused on taking care of Arthur. Richard fought back. He held press conferences, claimed Emily was trying to stage a coup, called me a manipulator taking advantage of a sick man. His lawyers filed motions, demanded psychiatric evaluations, tried every legal maneuver to maintain control. The trial, when it finally happened, was brutal. Months of testimony, expert witnesses, financial records. I sat in that courtroom day after day, watching Richard's empire crumble as evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of power piled up. When the verdict came down, Richard got 14 years in federal prison. His wife Margaret got 6, Lucas got probation, and had to pay back everything he'd stolen. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. Arthur moved back to the main estate, with Emily taking over as his legal guardian and CEO of the company. The press finally moved on to other stories. Life started to settle, and I prepared to go back to Portland. Back to my old life, except Emily had other plans. "I want you to work for the company," she said one afternoon. Sitting across from me in the estate's library, I laughed. "Emily, I'm a cashier and a delivery guy. I don't know the first thing about high finance. You know about loyalty. You know about doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. That's rarer than you think." She leaned forward, expression serious. "I need people I can trust, Steve, and I trust you completely. I'll teach you everything else." I thought about Portland, my cramped apartment, my 3 soul-crushing jobs, the loneliness that had defined my life for so long. I thought about Arthur, who asked about me every day, who smiled whenever I walked into a room, who'd become more like family to me than my own blood relatives ever had. "Okay," I said. "I'll try." It was hard at first, learning the business, understanding markets and investments and corporate strategy. I spent nights reading textbooks, days shadowing Emily and other executives, making mistakes and learning from them. But I worked harder than anyone. Showed up earlier, stayed later, because that's what I'd always done. The difference was, now it was for something that mattered. I earned my place, not because of my connection to Arthur, but because I proved myself capable. Within a year, I was managing a small division. Within 2 years, I was sitting in board meetings. And somewhere along the way, Emily and I fell in love. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was quiet, built on shared experiences, and late-night conversations, and working together to protect someone we both cared about. It was trust and respect and the kind of partnership I'd never thought I'd find. We got married in a small ceremony at the estate. Arthur was there in the front row, smiling even though he didn't fully understand what was happening. But he knew we were happy, and that was enough. A year after the wedding, Emily gave birth to our daughter, Clara, and watching Arthur hold her, this man who couldn't remember his own past but somehow knew how to love, I felt a kind of peace I'd never experienced before. My parents reached out eventually. They'd seen the news, figured out I'd landed in money, and suddenly they wanted to reconnect. My dad called, voice tight and awkward. "Steve, we've been thinking about you. We were too hard on you before. We'd like to talk." I almost laughed. After years of treating me like nothing more than a paycheck, after cutting me off the moment I stopped sending money, now they wanted to talk because they thought I was rich. They showed up at the estate one afternoon unannounced. I met them at the gate, refused to let them in. "You want money," I said. "Not a question. A statement." My dad tried to deny it, but my mom jumped right in. "Your brother's in trouble again. He owes some bad people. We need 50,000 to settle his debts." I looked at these people who'd raised me, who'd never once asked if I was happy or healthy or okay, who'd taken and taken and taken until I had nothing left to give. "No," I said simply. "Steve, don't be selfish. We're family. You're not my family," I said, and the words felt like freedom. "You never were. Family is the people who show up when things are hard. Family is caring about someone, even when there's nothing in it for you. You failed that test a long time ago." My dad's face turned red. "If you don't help us, you're dead to me. I've been dead to you my whole life. Dad, you just didn't notice because I was still useful." I turned and walked back through the gate, back to the estate, back to Arthur and Emily and Clara, back to the people who actually loved me. I heard my mother crying behind me, heard my father shouting, but I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I didn't look back. That was 5 years ago today. I'm the COO of Caldwell Financial Group. I've earned it through hard work and dedication, through proving myself again and again. Emily runs the company as CEO, and together we've built something Arthur would be proud of. Arthur is still with us, living peacefully at the estate. His memory hasn't improved, it never will, but he's happy. He spends his days in the garden, playing with Clara, being surrounded by people who love him. Sometimes he calls me his grandson. Sometimes he doesn't remember my name at all. But he always knows I'm safe. I'm family. Clara is 4 now, bright and curious and full of life. She follows Arthur around the garden, holds his hand, tells him stories she makes up on the spot. And he listens like every word is precious, even though he'll forget them by dinner. My parents tried reaching out a few more times over the years. The last message I got from them was 3 years ago. Your brother is in prison. Don't you care? I deleted it without responding. I learned something on this journey, something I wish I'd understood years ago. Kindness isn't weakness, but it also can't be limitless. You can help people, you can sacrifice for people, but not at the cost of your own humanity, not at the cost of becoming nothing more than a tool for others to use. The day I stopped on that rainy street and helped a dying stranger, I thought I was just doing the right thing. I didn't know it would lead here, to a family I chose, to a career I never could have imagined, to a life that feels real and whole and mine. Sometimes I think about that version of Steve Morrison who worked 3 jobs and sent every spare dollar to people who never appreciated it, who is so used to being used that he didn't know what it felt like to be valued, that Steve was trying so hard to be good that he forgot to be good to himself. I don't make that mistake anymore. I stand in the garden now, watching Arthur and Clara laugh at something, a butterfly, maybe, or a bird, and Emily comes up beside me, taking my hand. Happy? She asks. I think about the question. About the cramped apartment and the dead end, jobs and the family that never saw me as anything more than a paycheck. About the choice to stop, to help, to care when no one else would. About how one decision on one rainy afternoon led to all of this. Yeah, I say, squeezing her hand. I'm happy, and I mean it, because I learned the most important lesson anyone can learn. The family you choose is just as real as the family you're born into. Sometimes more real. Sometimes it's the only thing that saves you. And kindness, real kindness that comes from genuine care and not just obligation. That's the thing that changes everything. That's the thing that saved my life.